hurry back because the Word of God is ready for you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. I was talking to my niece last night, and as we're talking, she's a firm woman, and so she said, "Oh no," she tells me, "I'm not gonna." And we were talking about a situation, and the situation doesn't so much matter, but she tells me, she's like, "Oh no, you got to understand, in this one, nah." And I told her, I said, "Baby, what you need to understand though is when the time comes," and I really had stepped back from arguing with her about, we weren't arguing, it was a healthy conversation, but I was kind of withdrawing from pressing the issue because I knew it. I know, but I did end up sharing this with her. I said, "Listen, when the Lord does decide to show up and deal with this thing that you are like adamantly saying no to right now," I said, "Trust me, He's going to make you strong to do it, and He's going to make it worth letting go of that thing." And she didn't argue after that. She just said, "Okay, it's going to have to be that, and it's going to have to be later because it's not today." And I said, "Amen." And that's what it is when you encounter, go ahead and shut them doors, Brother David. When you encounter the presence of God, He has a way of giving you strength you never knew you had. Like, here's the deal, as we worship and as we pray, many times it results in the tears, but tears are that, they really do water our life. Water the life we have. We're supposed to feel something. You know what I mean? We're not supposed to be these dead, unfeeling, unemotional people. Now, I will be the first to tell you, there are times where it looks as though I may be unemotional. When I'm dealing with you, or when we're having different, we're dealing with things, there are times when it looks like I'm unemotional. But it's not that I am unemotional, it's just I've been given strength by God to remain composed in a matter, to remain strong in a matter, to remain firm, and to walk in the authority that God has given me in any given matter. But it doesn't mean that I'm not touched by emotions. It just means that I'm not led, or even, here's the thing, is you're not so much led by your emotions as you're driven by them when you give them control. But in the presence of God, the Lord has a way of, like I said, giving you that strength that you need and really making difficult tasks and decisions worthwhile when you're in the presence of God. One of the other blessings in the presence of God is that He has a way of, you walk away knowing more, even about the situation you're in, but even about other things. All of a sudden, you come away with more wisdom. Maybe it's not obviously, not apparent immediately, but it always is. That's always a reality when you are in the presence of God, and you're in the Word, and you're going forward, and you're being taught, and you're even teaching and even sharing. Are we still doing 3x5, sister? Praise God. I've slipped a little bit, but I'm going to get back on. Thank you. Well, we're going to be, this week's going to be the bombest week for 3x5. So just so you know, me and Sister Christine, I shared this thing with her I used to do, and I still need to do it at times, is these 3x5 cards, write a verse and just hold on to it, look at it, and then speak it to somebody, and then look at it and read it, and then when you're at the, read it again, and then eventually once you have that in your heart, then you kind of give the card to somebody, or you know what, sometimes I keep them for a long time. And I just kind of cycle through them. But, so it's one of those things that to be having that word close, it does a lot for me. So here's the deal is in this life that I live now, and in this life that we need to be living now, the only thing that is unchanging in my life is the very thing that causes so much change and so many changes in my life. Did you catch that? The only thing that is unchanging in my life is the very thing that causes so much change and so many changes in my life. And that thing is this relationship that I have with Jesus. Because of this relationship that I have with Jesus, I will not remain the same. I understand that there's a lot more of Him to be revealed to me. I understand that there's a lot more of His character that needs to come out of me. I understand there's a lot more about Him that I need to learn. And so, the only thing that's unchanging in my life is my relationship with Jesus. The fact that I am going to stay in a living, a vibrant, and active relationship with Him. That being said, He brings about changes. Now, when I use the word changes in this instance, it's like those trials, those things. You know, that's a phrase we use at times. I'm going through them changes, man. It's a trip. But here's the thing, is in the words of my brother Vince, he said, let them changes change you. And that's ultimately what Jesus is trying to do. He's trying to change us. The reason that He's trying to change us is because He's trying to grow us. Like, here's the deal, is as I speak to you today, I don't hesitate to tell you that I'm a better uncle, I'm a better Nino, I'm a better husband, I'm a better friend, I'm a better pastor than I was a year ago, than I was 3 months ago. Still some, am I done? No. But I'm better than I've been. And I don't need to be the best that there is. I just need to be better. I need to be growing. I need to be allowing these changes that Christ would have in me, would have me live out. The book of Psalms, in chapter 75, it tells us that it says promotion doesn't come from the south, the east, or the west. It says God is the judge and He exalts who He wants. In other words, He lifts up who He wants and He puts down who He wants. Many times when we go through these changes, through these trials, through different sufferings, we are worried about our position, our status in life, or where we are. We're measuring ourselves against another, maybe somebody else, or maybe somewhere we used to be. Or maybe we're measuring ourselves against the bank account, or we're measuring ourselves against the possessions, but ultimately those things do not equate success in our lives. Matter of fact, I was listening to a sermon this morning, and the brother confirmed the word that was to be brought this morning, and he was talking about success. He said success is not the amount of things that we get. Success is not working until you get to a point where you can live your life as a vacation. As a man and woman of God, success is continuing to live out Christ to the fullness that you have attained Him right now, and then pursuing Him more. That more of Him would be seen in you. That's the good thing, is there's always more of Him. Paul says it like this. Here's the deal. The message of the gospel is a message that brings people up. Do you understand what I'm saying? The message of the gospel lifts people up out of the miry clay, out of the things that we've been involved with, out of the old mindset. As I had that friendly, it was a healthy discussion last night. There was a time when that woman and I would have never been able to have that healthy discussion. I would have banged the table. I would have slammed the door as a Christian. There was a time even before that where I would have broke some stuff and I would have went out boozing and getting high as a servant of Satan. But here's the deal. The message of the gospel didn't stop being a message that lifts me up when I just stopped using dope, when I just stopped when I just stopped doing all those things that were obviously sinful in my life. The message of the gospel elevated me to the point where the worst thing I did was bang my fist on a table and slam a car door or slam a house door. That's where it brought me to. But that was 2 years ago. And since then, I have been elevated to the point where I refuse to bang my fist on a table, to slam a door. I'm going to be real with you. About 2 weeks ago, I was just frustrated in the house. And so I have my phone. I used to be a phone thrower too. I was famous for breaking the phones. Very frustrated, and it wasn't so much with my family and with the people in my house, but that was the discussion going on, and I had my phone there, and I go, ugh, I was ready to throw it. This is how I felt when I would throw my phone. And I'll be real with you. I had my phone, and I didn't throw it like I used to. Like, I put it right there on the thing, and I put it firmly on the couch right there. I was mad. No, it was, like I say, it might not have even looked that bad to most anybody out there. But understand, in my heart, I knew what was going on. I seen my actions. I said, and just put my phone there, and immediately I had to tell everybody, you know what, I'm sorry. That's not Jesus. That's not what Jesus is raising up. Here's the deal. Actually, at that moment, I felt like I had failed. Like I say, if you would have seen the scene, it wasn't the biggest blow up or anything. But even just for me, that moment, just to put my phone down firmly, for me was failure. Why? Because the message of Jesus Christ in my life requires me to be lifted up out of what I was. I determined as of last week, last month, last year, I am going to be a better man of God than I have ever been. I am not satisfied with what I was. Not because I'm miserable or I'm missing something, but because I know there was more and I was created for more. It's the sinful life, the sinful world that we were born and raised in that allowed us to lower our standards. But the message of the gospel is a message that raises a man up, that raises a woman up, and that's got to be good news to you. I'm not putting you down for where you are today, but it frustrates me when you're in the same place today that you were yesterday. Me and Joey, me and my children, we're not perfect, but we're growing. Yesterday, my people cannot live life without ending up behind the pulpit. My daughter, just frustrated, tired. But you know what? She didn't let it take her whole day over. She went about her day. She handled business. She didn't ruin everybody's day by her being frustrated and tired. And even at one point, she was probably miserable. But you know what? It didn't overtake her. She's starting to be raised up in the situation. She's starting to become a bigger girl. Maybe not taller, but bigger heart, more Jesus. Paul says in Philippians chapter 3, verse 13, "Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended." In other words, I don't consider that I've made it. He says, "But one thing I do is forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead." Check it out. I'm going to ask you to go with me to the book of Luke chapter 19, if you will, this morning. And we're going to talk about a man that I can appreciate. Brother Zacchaeus is his name. Does anybody know the Zacchaeus song? Yeah. You want to sing it, Sister Chantel? I don't know the Zacchaeus song, but everybody wants to always sing it to me when we bring it up. Praise God. Zacchaeus was a wee man or something to that effect. A wee little man. Praise God. Think that's funny, Dave? Dave's going to come up and sing it for us after service, so stick around and pull out your YouTube account. But in the book of Luke, chapter 19, verse 1, we're going to see how amazing God is to raise up and to lift up this man Zacchaeus. Because ultimately, the message of the gospel is one. The invasion of Jesus into our lives is one that lifts it up. And I'm going to tell you something. You know what? There is no way we can afford. Here's the thing. We cannot afford to have a little bit of Jesus on the side. It must be the invasion of Jesus Christ into our lives each and every day. I cannot be what I used to be out there. It's not going to work as men and women of God if we try to see how close to the world we can get and still be saved over here. Still have a hold of Jesus. Still, if Jesus calls, I'll make it to heaven. No, we've got to stop that mindset and that attitude. That may work for somebody else, but there's no proof of that. I'll tell you, I know what works. It's as being as far away from the world, looking as I can. Not looking like them. I'm going to tell you something. I love my brothers, my sisters, I'll call them that are in sin right now. But I don't appreciate, I despise the sin they're in. I will go and I will minister, but there are some places I don't belong. But I pray, and as soon as the Lord gives opportunity, maybe I've missed it, but I'm faithful to speak to them. I'm faithful to tell them. I'm faithful to be there. Here we got Brother Zacchaeus. Luke chapter 19, verse 1, and the word of the Lord says, that Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. I want to tell you something right off the bat. Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. I don't know if you remember Jericho from the Old Testament, but Jericho in the Old Testament is the city that Joshua marched around and through a shout of praise, through days of obedience, and then through a shout of praise, the walls of Jericho come tumbling down. In the words of that dude, what's his name? In the words of the Bible. He took them from the Bible. Some of you know what I'm talking about. But the walls of Jericho fall down. And you know what happens when the walls of Jericho fall after Joshua and the Israelites have conquered Jericho? They go on to say in Joshua chapter 6, you don't have to go there, I'll read it to you. Joshua charged them at that time, saying, cursed is the man who before the Lord rises up and builds this city Jericho. He will lay its foundation with his firstborn, and with his youngest he will set up its gates. He says, you know what? If someone raises up Jericho once again, if someone raises up the world once again after God has defeated it, there's going to start to be some loss. He says, if you go back to Jericho, for one, you go to build Jericho, first you're going to lay a foundation. It's going to cost you, what is it, your firstborn. If you continue that work of raising up Jericho, raising up what God has broken down in your life, broken down for your own good, you continue that, you go all the way to setting up its gates, it's going to cost you your youngest. We've got to understand, people, that as long as we continue to raise up and try to protect and try to build the things that God is tearing down, we're never going to go forward and we're going to keep losing. The warning is there as Joshua says it in Joshua chapter 6. But at the same time, we live under a better covenant. That's a reality that we will keep losing if we build up what God has torn down for our good. But the mercy, the grace of Jesus, his desire that none of us would die, that none of us would perish, but that we would all come to repentance. Where is Jesus at? He entered and passed through Jericho. Next verse tells us, now behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. In other words, he had a good job, and he already had money. Verse 3 says, and he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. Now, if you look in the Greek, everybody knows I like to go to the Greek. It's not that he was short. It's that he wasn't tall. He couldn't see. There was a crowd around Jesus. Understand that Jesus was willing to go to Jericho. So no matter where you are, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've built up, Jesus is still willing to go there and get you. But you've got to understand and start to believe that warning that if you keep raising up things God has torn down for your good, you're going to keep suffering loss. But the message today and the blessing today is that Jesus will go there to get you. But let's look at Brother Zacchaeus here. It says he was short of stature, so he couldn't see Jesus. And verse 4 goes on to tell us, So he ran ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree. More appropriately, it's a mulberry fig tree, to see him. To see who? Jesus. To see Jesus. Why? It says, for he was going to pass this way. Here's the thing. He had an appointment. He had a time that he could see where Jesus was going to be. There was an obvious time Jesus was going to be in a certain spot. And so he goes to this mulberry fig tree. And so as I've read about the mulberry fig tree, the branches, it was a sprawling tree, and it had branches that were easy to climb. It wasn't that hard for him to get there, but still he had to climb. It wasn't the hardest tree to climb, but still it took some effort. You know what? Getting into the house of God, getting into prayer. You know what? A lot of times it's our mind, it's our heart that wants to stop doing that kind of stuff, or not even start doing that stuff. It's not the hardest. It's not as hard as we make it, but it's going to require some action. Just like this. He didn't climb the most difficult tree there was to climb, but he had to act. Verse 5 goes on to tell us, and when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. You know, the reason that most of us, the reason we have to make that effort to get to Jesus is because we've already done a lot of work building Jericho back up. But you know what? Jesus is willing to meet us right where we are, but it's going to take some effort, just like Zacchaeus climbing the tree. But I'm going to tell you something this morning. As Jesus looked at Zacchaeus, here's the thing, with a crowd around him, like I know, I was in a big crowd this weekend, and I know when there's a crowd around me, I tend to focus on the crowd. I'm not really looking at the sky. I'm not looking at what might be up in a tree. I'm not looking at what might be up on the roof, what may be hanging from the rafters. More often, we're hanging around, we're looking at the crowd. But understand, Jesus knew where Zacchaeus was. He wasn't startled that Zacchaeus was acting crazy. Here's the thing is, Zacchaeus had to put himself in a position. It says he was a tax collector. In other words, he had a good job. And maybe like a CEO. Maybe he was stunting. He had on one of them Hugo Boss suits. Well, or one of those Hugo Boss tunics, huh? And then but all of a sudden, he hears Jesus is coming around. And he runs to him. I'm going to tell you what, right off the bat, Zacchaeus running probably made him look like crazy to everybody else. What's his tax? Here's the deal. He's a tax collector and he's rich. Nobody likes him. He's a jive turkey burn job if there ever was one in the Bible. And there's a lot of them. So Zacchaeus looks crazy, but he gets up that tree, and you know what? He doesn't do it for nothing. Because Jesus, when any regular man would have just been focused on the crowd, Jesus looks and says, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. Zacchaeus doesn't stay. Let's go to the next verse. So let's see what Zacchaeus does. So he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. Praise God. Many times, Jesus is giving us an invitation. Either for one, to come to him, to surrender to him. Maybe to take a step of faith. Maybe to start to walk with greater character, more integrity than we had before. More dedication, more determination, more commitment to Jesus, to the kingdom of God than we've had before. But many of us, if we were in Zacchaeus' shoes, would be like, no, Jesus, it's kind of a big deal. I already made a lot of effort to get up here. I'm kind of going to kick it up here for a while. And, but those people really got a nice house, and I know you really should probably be at their house. Nah, Jesus made the invitation to Zacchaeus, and it says right here, Zacchaeus, he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. He received Jesus joyfully. we've got to understand that when we receive Jesus, when we receive even the instruction that God has for us, it needs to come to a point already where we are receiving joyfully. We've got to be done with this attitude. You know, sometimes I joke with a few people in ministry, and you know, one lady in particular about to write a book, Fight God and Lose. But you know what? This cannot be our all the time thing. We waste a lot of time, a lot of seasons fighting God and then losing and eventually yielding to what God is trying to do in our life. You want to know why after 6 years of getting saved and serving God that my wife and I, my children and I are running and operating the ministry here? I'm going to tell you why. Because we have not wasted a lot of time fighting God. Does it mean we've done it perfect every day? As I've told you many times, no. But we don't waste a lot of time fighting God. And when we say yes to God and we begin to go, it's not always easy. But when we do it, we always receive great joy. The Lord is always with us. It's not always our burden to carry, but Jesus desires to carry it with us. But too many times, too many people are sitting up in the tree arguing with Jesus about coming down.
That's right.
You want Jesus to count it to your account that you ran to the tree. You want Jesus to count it to your account that you climbed up the tree. Jesus, I already done a lot. Like, Jesus, you're lucky that I've even done this much. No, you're lucky that you got to see Jesus and He has made a personal invitation to us. Give Him praise if you're going to this morning. The call to prayer. Why do I got to pray for them? It breaks my heart when a man or a woman of God calls me. Well, I can't stand my stepson, my stepdaughter. I can't stand my in-laws. I'm not looking at you. I was like, I can't look at nobody in there. She loves her in-laws. Let that be known. I can't stand my in-laws. You need to get right with your in-laws, sister. Or whatever it is. But I think the Lord's calling me to pray for him. Well, duh. Straight up. Hey, I can't stand the cat my son runs with. I can't stand my daughter's boyfriend. I can't stand my son's girlfriend. I can't stand the wife. I can't stand the mother of these kids. You know what? But I feel like the Lord's calling me. Well, then quit arguing with Jesus and accept a personal invitation to obey Him and get blessed by Him. Man, I'm wrong. Starting something. But Zacchaeus makes haste, obeys Jesus. Here's the thing, like I say, Zacchaeus runs, he goes up the tree, he gave some effort. We can't be a people that are like, but look, Jesus, like I did all this. Because if he turns it back around, he's like, look, dummy, I've done all this. I've risen. And even then, verse 7, it goes on. But when they saw it, who's they? The crowd, the religious people. They all complained, saying, he has gone to be a guest with a man who is a sinner. You know what, church? Let's not be they. Let's not be they. Let's be these people that are blessed when we see our sister getting blessed. Let's see these people that are blessed when we see our brother getting blessed. Let's not, you know what, I've dealt with people. I had a guy I grew up with, and we're both this tall, so neither one of us grew up. And me, him, and Zacchaeus. One day he's like, bro, I like your church, but he trips me out, and I don't like that. And he started cussing while he's talking to me outside there. When they start off, when someone starts crying right away and everything, and I know it's supposed to be the Lord. I'm like, dude, you are missing it, bro. It's like, come on. Let's not be they. You know what they were doing? They were looking at everything they didn't like. Here's the thing. Like, you know what? If Jesus They should have been glad Jesus was in Jericho when Jericho was supposed to be a cursed place. The Son of God was breaking in to break the curse, and they were worried about who else was going to get blessed. I'm going to tell you something. If you're worried about who else is getting blessed or going to get blessed, you will stay like that until you change. The person getting blessed, you don't know what they've been through. The person getting blessed, you don't know what they worked for. You don't know how many times, how many tears, how many seasons, how many meals they've missed. How many losses they've suffered. It's just their time. And you and I are not the ones that appoint the time. And right away they wanted to criticize Jesus. So he's going to be a guest with a man who's a sinner? So he goes in. According to the reading of this, the next verse, you can go to the next verse, brother, if you will. According to the reading of this, they probably had dinner. And at one point, they probably had fellowship. Zacchaeus had probably heard Jesus speak, Jesus minister. Zacchaeus, here we are in verse 8. Zacchaeus stands up, and then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, I give half of my goods to the poor. And if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore it fourfold." There's the thing, and the way it's written, it says, "If I have taken anything," like he had taken stuff. He was a jive turkey burn job, I guarantee it. In the Greek, it says he was a jive turkey burn job. It's not the way it's written. I can't explain it, but it's not if, it's that he had taken stuff. But right off the bat, he says, "Look, Lord, I give half my goods to the poor, and if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold." The way the Bible describes what he had done, the Bible would call it under biblical statutes, he extorted money. He didn't rob nobody. He extorted money. So that, to you, that may not make much difference. Well, he's a burn job, yeah. But listen, in the law, it makes a big difference. Because according to the law, when you extort money from somebody, you pay back what you have extorted, and then you add 20% on top of that. So according to the law, all this man is obligated to do is pay back what he had extorted and give an extra 20%. So if he took 100 from somebody, he'd give him 120. Are you with me? That's all he was obligated to do. But because of the great invitation he was given from the Messiah himself, the Lord had stirred something in him. And instead of just giving back what was extorted and 20%, he gave back fourfold, which is actually the penalty for robbery, for breaking in someone's property and stealing their stuff, or strong-arming them and taking their stuff. He paid back even more than what was required of him. He gave even more than what the law said he should do. First of all, he says, "I give half of my goods to the poor. And the people that I've taken from, I restore 4 times as much, fourfold." I'm going to tell you something. The Lord is doing something tremendous in my life. And when he does something tremendous in my life, as of 2015 and then 2016, and here we are 2017, it's not for me. It is for the leadership of this church. It's for the sake of leading God's people and growing God's kingdom. When God does something tremendous in my life, here's the deal for me. There is no separation. Yes, I don't sleep in this building. I may have once, but I don't sleep in this building. But for me, there's no separation. My heart is always here. 3 in the morning when I can't sleep, it's something that's going on here or surrounding here. It's something that's going on in this city. It's something that's going on in the congregation. But the Lord has been doing something tremendous in my heart. And it's not easy for me to describe. I'm not going to sit up here and preach about that. But what I am telling you is that the Lord is calling us to more and more maturity. It is time for us to stop being like Brother Zacchaeus and sitting in the tree arguing. Well, you're lucky I went to church this morning. You know what? Tell your mom that. Tell your boyfriend that. Tell your husband that. Tell you whatever. But you know what? I'm gonna tell you. You're lucky that you're telling them that. But when it comes time to face the Lord, that's not going to hold water. We've got to be a people that really begin to understand this fear of God. And here's the deal, as I talk about like the seriousness that we need to have for the things of God, look at the mercy He has already extended us. How many times did He tear down the Jericho that was in our life? That idolatrous, that perverted, that jacked up, that dirty place that didn't glorify God. And He tore it down. And how many times did we build it? And then finally, when Jesus comes walking into our situation and make us an invitation. Here's the thing. For some of you, it's the invitation to accept Jesus. But for others, it's the invitation to go forward and to start to have more impact, be more mature for the kingdom of God. And you know what? If in your household, if in your relationships, if in your friendships, if in your workplace, you're not exhibiting the character of Christ, well then that's right, a perfect place to start. There's somewhere where you are right now, where you have an influence, where you can begin to do better and do more. But you're up there just saying, Jesus, I go to church most of the time. Jesus, I went to that prayer meeting that time. I'm looking for, no. He's calling us to more. Zacchaeus is an excellent example. He ran. He wasn't afraid to look like a fool. And when Jesus told him, get down, when Jesus said, it's time to humble yourself, he didn't argue with Jesus. He just humbled himself. He got down. And when he stood up, he was ready to respond to Jesus. I'm going to say this. If you're not ready to respond to Jesus, it's because you have not humbled yourself before Jesus. And if you haven't humbled yourself, chances are it's either fear or pride or greed that's stopping you from humbling yourself before God. Why would it be fear? Because you're afraid Jesus won't give you back what you give up. You know what? He's not going to give you back what you give up. What He gives back is better. Even if He takes your life today, what you get back is better. Even if you live in poverty from the rest of your days on this earth, what you get back is greater. Pride, I like what I do too much. I don't want to look like a fool. But look at Zacchaeus. He ran to the tree. He looked like it's saying that Hugo Boss tunic, all fitted and cut nice like the news guys wear. That's why I'm always like, that news guys, man, they got good suits. Well, Zacchaeus was like one of those. But he ran. He probably got sweaty. He got up on the tree. And if you're anything, here's the deal. If you're anything like me, which Zacchaeus was, a short dude, you don't just climb a tree real, it don't look real like studly. Like you got to climb and you got to maneuver just like I'm doing over here. Like I bet you Antonio could probably like leap the pulpit. Like I would literally have to, you know what I mean? You get the picture? I would have to like climb over the pulpit and then hang down on the other side and then drop, and it would not look pretty. But that was Zacchaeus. He wasn't worried about looking pretty. He was worried about getting to the king and then obeying the king and then going forward. And when he stood up, it was time for him to respond to what the king had done in his life, and he was grateful. When are we going to be a people that are grateful for what the king has done in our lives? Hallelujah! Because I am. Verse 9. Today, then Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he also is a son of Abraham. He says today salvation has come to this house. There was a lot of hunger, a lot of obedience, a lot of getting things in order, and proper response on Zacchaeus' part. But he did it. And Jesus responded, today salvation has come to this house. It didn't just say, today Zacchaeus, you're going to make it to heaven. It said salvation has come to the house. That word salvation doesn't just mean that I'm going to make it to heaven, that I will be raptured when Jesus calls us. That word salvation talks about healing. That part of me that don't know how to trust cats because so-and-so burned me, that don't know how to act right, or that don't know how to... It means complete healing. It means that gets changed. Like I said when I started, the one thing that is constant in my life, the one thing that doesn't change, is the thing that causes all the change in my life. He says, today salvation has come to this house. Salvation, total and complete healing. Not just the bunion on your toe, but the condition of your heart being healed. In verse 10 it goes on and it says, for the Son of Man has come to seek and save that which was lost. Pride doesn't let us say that we're lost. But I'll tell you what, when you will bow before Jesus, when you stand, when he finally calls you to stand, you're ready to admit and deal with those things that don't look so pretty. How could I tell you about me throwing the phone hard? I put it down hard that time. And it hurt me. It broke me. I wasn't ready to stand before Jesus. But when I had done that, I knew I needed to kneel before Jesus. Because if not, I would fall. And when I stood, I was ready to tell the people in my presence that I was sorry for what I had done. It didn't matter that I felt like things were out of order or things were not happening the way they were supposed to. It didn't matter that I'm the man of this house and I have the authority, plus I'm your pastor. That didn't matter. As their pastor, I needed to lead them in showing them how God deals with people. Check this out. If you'll turn with me quickly to Matthew chapter 19 and verse 24. I'm almost done. In Matthew chapter 19, this is the story of the rich young ruler. And the story goes that he said, Lord, what do I got to do? And he said, you know, there's the commandments. And he says, I do that. And Jesus goes on to tell him, you know what? Then sell everything you have, give to the poor, and come out, follow me. And that rich young ruler, it says he goes away sad. You know what? That rich young ruler and Zacchaeus were the same type of people with two different responses. And this is where we get this principle that Jesus says. This is red letters, Jesus. It says, and again I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Here's the thing. Zacchaeus was more than a rich man. He had a great job. But he became a man of God, a man that would enter the kingdom of God. In the book of Hebrews it says, how will we escape if we neglect so great a salvation? God has already done amazing things for us. Some of us, we need to accept Jesus and let him be Lord. It starts with a prayer. But then we follow through with a life. There's going to be times where you make mistakes. There's going to be times where it's not easy. There's going to be times where it's miserable. But as a people and as a church, it is time for us to not be the they, which is that group that was mad at Jesus because he was going to bless Zacchaeus. They were mad at Jesus just because he was with Zacchaeus. They had forgotten the fact that they were even living in a place that was ungodly, that needed Jesus. They were focused on something else. The rich young ruler in Matthew chapter 19 helps the Lord to establish that principle that it's more difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom than it is for the camel to pass through the eye of the needle. God is doing impossible things in impossible circumstances. And we are those impossibilities. It's just time for us to stop fighting with the Lord. To start going forward. I know that for every one of us it's a different thing. But I'm also well aware of the fact that it's not an easy call. And that's how you know it's God's call. Because we don't do it alone. I couldn't have a successful marriage or household without Jesus. And you know what success means? It doesn't mean that I have made it and that she's good with what she got. It's all yours. Nah. You know what it means? Joey Garcia, I promise to let God make me a better man tomorrow than I am today. To the congregation of this church, I promise to let God make me a better pastor, a better leader than I am today, a better uncle, a better friend. That's my commitment. I'm not going to argue with God and tell him I've already done enough. I'm just kind of going to chill in this tree now, Lord. No. As he calls me down, I'm going to get down before God. And when it's time to stand up, oh, I'm going to give abundantly of my life, of my time, of my finances. And it's not just my call to carry out. I am called to lead you in this life. Each and every one of you. It's not about you plotting how, all right, no, I'm going to stack all this and then I want to present it all to God. No, it's about today, salvation coming upon the household. That's what he says. Today, salvation has come to this house. When Zacchaeus honored God with a proper response, it doesn't just say, today, Zacchaeus, your crooked heart is healed. Salvation came to his house. He probably had a family. He probably had servants. He probably had employees. And to those that were under Zacchaeus' authority, salvation was coming to them. So for our own good, we need to stop arguing with the Lord. Stop disobeying God. Start letting him have his way in our lives. Because the gospel is a message that raises people up. God is the one that judges and exalts. But the only way it works is to do things according to the word. Because remember, it was according to the word that Zacchaeus jumped down off of the tree. And it says he didn't waste time. He did it with haste. That means he did it quickly. Will someone go get the praise and worship team? Donovan's out of here. Just kidding. No, he's not. Don't blame that girl. She's the reason you get in here, bro. I love you, brother. It amazes me that God would still desire to raise up people even when we feel like we can appreciate. You know what? There's things I'm very grateful for. As I look back, sometimes I draw strength from all the things the Lord has done. From all the blessings that I've seen. But I can draw strength from that, but I can't live in that. I've got to let that fuel me to go forward. And when I talk about blessings, I'm going to tell you something. This is a nugget here. What is going on in the spiritual will manifest or become real in the natural. When I talk about blessings, I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about material things. I'm talking about authority from God. I'm talking about peace from God. I'm talking about rest from God. I'm talking about strength from God. Sometimes God is so on me that I can't even go to sleep. But whatever happens in the spirit will manifest in the natural. If you continue to go forward and to be faithful in everything you do unto the Lord, you will be raised up. You will see things in the natural that are greater than anything you would have thought for yourself. But those are just a byproduct. And that can't be the reason that we determine to serve God. The news for this people is that God raises us up. This message of the gospel is meant to raise us up. And in that, there's going to be times where it feels like we're torn down. But just remember, like Brother Zacchaeus, just get down off the tree and just get before Jesus. Just get low before Jesus. Bow before Jesus. Honor Jesus. Make sure he's greater than you. Greater than your plan, your plot, your intention. And when you do that, when he causes you to stand up, make sure your response is what it needs to be. I'm going to ask everybody to stand with me this morning. If there's anyone in here that before today you didn't realize how far you were from Jesus, but as this message is being preached, you're just like Zacchaeus and you know Jesus is near. And you want to see him and you want him to talk to you. You want him to come and be a part of your life. Come and lead. Not be a part, but come and lead your life. If there's anyone in here that's the desire that you have right now as I've shared this message, I'm going to ask you to come forward right now.